We're gonna take our time, slow down and design. Yeah.
You know, in all my travels and permaculture, it's always been a few small farmers that have shown us the way, you know, and they didn't even know about permaculture. And so we stumble onto them. And like the rabbit farmer on the roof, KB Gurung in Nepal, and Mrs. Rai, who, you know, build forest gardens around her rice bins. And we walk into these oases and we think, oh wow, these people are doing permaculture. So it's going to come from the grassroots. It's going to be small scale, and it's kind of what I've been doing for 30 years, and just working with recycled stuff. But you know, what I've done is create climate zones all the way from 11, you know, to 7 inside, so that we can do forest gardening year-round without any fossil fuels. And we build all of our soils with using animals integrated into the system, with straw yards and stuff. Timing is everything. Now, we had, last year was our 27th year of doing the design course. I think it's the longest in the world. No one's challenged that yet. So, and there was one of our bananas had a big rack on it, and it was ready to harvest. So we got some mileage out of that, a lot of mileage, sort of a photo opportunity. And then we were able to eat that banana stalk at 7,200 feet and share it with the permaculture group that year. So I'm waiting, you know, we've had about 7 or 8 big racks in the last 4 years. The folks that are harvesting that banana are standing on a walkway in my 72-foot greenhouse that is a worm farm. Well, the entire place is a worm farm, but we can actually harvest the worm castings from that. And on the right is an annual bed. And so those are some small things that we're doing, but the only thing we can be sure of is that, you know, we have a lot of problems, and Robin spent the first half of her slideshow showing what those problems are, the evidence that we need to make some changes. And it doesn't, you know, just this last summer we had huge drought, and then we had floods, and just recently we had tornadoes, and we had the tornado, the cyclone in the Philippines. The image on the right is a little bit of climate disaster that I had in my forest garden just about a month ago. Since it was a very wet year, all the leaves were still on the forest garden, and we had a moderately wet snow, and so I lost a few branches, I lost a few trees, but you know, that was manageable. It wasn't such a great opportunity in Boulder. You know, they're not as protected as we are because we are intermountain, and they got, you know, wiped out or really impacted by a major rain event. So these things are going to come on, and you probably didn't even hear about it, but the same thing happened in Austin, Texas. It just, you know, every day you hear something about these major catastrophes. And like Robin's, I mean, I wouldn't want to be any place but where I'm at right now, because I've got my own sort of support system. We grow all our own food. We have, you know, have all our energy and stuff. So basically, we just have to create our own arcs, our own systems that work, that they're not polluting and that don't cost anything, and then we can share that information with everybody else. So I'm going to go through some some of our greenhouse technologies that I've developed and helped develop over the last 20 years. And we have 5 greenhouses now at the Institute, and they're all different scales. And we do some climate modeling to see how much energy and how much technology we need to get some results. I have one greenhouse that's $200, and it's probably my best greenhouse. And we build greenhouses for the 1% for $1 million. And I don't think they're really that much better. But and so the Sri greenhouse. Well, this is my reconstruction of the Phoenix greenhouse, and it's built from 75% salvage. So I salvaged the steel from another greenhouse that was torn down. It was 30 or 40 years old, but this steel is probably good for 200 years. So there's lots of opportunities to reuse. My house is passive solar, and it was built in 1975 from the dump. And I actually got a rebate from Carter for $8,000 for building a passive solar home. I haven't had a heating bill or a mortgage since. There's a big PV system up on there, thanks to Obama. That creates all of our electricity for our whole place, and we even sell it back. So this is our $200 greenhouse. It's attached to another greenhouse. It's actually west-facing somewhat. So we can actually grow 2 crops a year. We grow a cold crop in the springtime, which is kale and salad greens, and then we follow up with warm season crops, and it goes all the way to the ceiling. We're still eating tomatoes that we're ripening on the kitchen counter. So, and then we move in with drying racks, and then we cut everything down and let the worms eat it, and put some stable cleanings on that, and put some pallets on top of that, and we dry our spent grain from the brewery in there in the wintertime to feed our animals. We also use it for wood storage, and in the spring I bring in my nursery plants, wake them up, and so I can graft on them and get them in the market earlier. So again, using most people would have a place like this, and it would be a tool shed or just a storage shed, and then we never get any use. So we have all these uses that we've done innovatively. This is our attached greenhouse to our house. So I have a huge fig tree in there. It's 20 years old, and I get 5 months of fig season. There's also a PV system up there. This is one of my greenhouses that's built with wood, and I built it for not very much money. This is earlier on. If you see the fig tree is starting to move over into the other area, but for years we planted annual crops in there, and then we move in nursery in the spring. So, and we have pomegranates in there, and rosemary and Pakistani mulberry, and I used to grow big nopales in there. All the Mediterranean plants that don't need any warmth or much more warmth in the wintertime because they go dormant. So you don't want to build them, and all of the extra heat goes into my house in the wintertime, so I don't have to use much wood fired to keep my house warm. And we close it off and vent it out in the summer so it doesn't overheat the house. So simple solutions. This is another greenhouse that we build, similar, attached to a cabin that's employee housing. And this is another kind of Mediterranean greenhouse. And it's very low key. And we grow a couple of crops a year out of there. And you see the crop on the left, that is the next big cash crop of Colorado, there's lots of opportunities to. We just started to do that, and we did. We're value adding that, and growing that out so that we have another cash stream. And we're hoping that, eventually, drugs will be legal and responsibly used, and we'll take everybody out of prison and put them into, some meaningful work. So we have to get behind some of these, get over this stigma of that, and we still have, in Colorado, we still have a movement to, stop the marijuana growing and whatever. But this is my final greenhouse here that I built about 75% out of salvage, and it's a metal hoop house that's retrofitted to become a Mediterranean greenhouse. And it's probably about $3,000, and if you build that all out of bought material, it would be $20,000. So again, we used pallets to retain the beds, to skirt it. These folks are just doing some hugelkultur and filling up those beds with wood, mycelium, stable cleanings, leaves, and we moisten that down and let that sit over the winter, and I'll put pallets over that and put my nursery in there, and then in the spring I'll be planting low-bearing Indonesian papayas with a medicinal ground cover of brahmi and spilanthes, and I'll pop them in a few marijuana plants. On the back wall there'll be figs, 5 different varieties of figs that will be for propagation and for eating. Again, this is mostly the plastic. The polycarbonate was bought, and everything else, all the tin was salvaged. I've stored a lot of stuff. I have my own big recycling pile. I have people bringing up sawdust from a workshop. So we put sawdust on the floor, and then we grow worms in that. We put other stuff, and then we can harvest the worms even from the pathways. So this was my very first greenhouse back in early 90s. It might have been even before that, 87, I believe, when I built my first greenhouse from wood. It was 60 feet long, and I grew in that for 25 years, and I learned a lot. It was a prototype, and it burnt down. I learned a lot, and I did some of the same things. I made a lot of mistakes, so I didn't have to repeat some of those when I rebuilt the greenhouse this last time. But I had places in there to recreate. I had a hammock, I had a solar shower. I grew a lot of tropical plants, but it wasn't that productive on the tropical side because it didn't quite retain the temperatures that I need. It never frosted, but it didn't quite do it. It had a wood-burning sauna as well, but that actually is what burnt the place down. But I got smart and I built it all out of concrete and steel the next time. So this is, I don't know if you've ever had a big disaster in your life, but this was a big disaster for me. I was 67 at the time in 2007, and I was thinking, wow, I'm not going to have the resources and the capacity to rebuild from the ground up again, but it all happened thanks to just a lot of different things that came together with a lot of volunteer help and some funding and the insurance money. So this is what replaced that catastrophe. A recycled greenhouse with new polycarbonate and a better climate battery. And now I'm going on to my 5th year in the tropical food forest, and I've built 3 feet of virgin rainfoot soil in 5 years, just with worms and stable cleanings and mulch. So I have a partner who's an architect in my company called Ecosystems Design, and with the technology, even from Pele, we already sold our first big commercial greenhouse, and it was built at the same time I built my greenhouse. So he uses SketchUp, and that pile of steel, that's the greenhouse that we salvaged from another place, and brought it up and reconstructed it on a partially new foundation. And using new technologies, using SketchUp and Google Earth, you can do a lot of interesting things. I don't touch this stuff, but have other people that can do that. I don't want to get into that right in my time of life. I want to kind of scale down. So here's the greenhouse we hauled up, and I live on the side of a mountain, and there's a road right there, and there's a 300-foot drop down to the river. And I had stripped down my boat trailer to get all the material up there because it was 25 feet long, so I wasn't able to get it up on a regular trailer or a truck. And so when we started putting it up, we had lots of interns and volunteers and a bunch of climbers. They weren't afraid to get up and put this thing up like a rectory set. So it went up pretty well. It took about, I think, an entire year and a half to clean up the side and to put this up. And it was a difficult thing. I was sort of the foreman, and up on the left, that's my partner, Michael Thompson, who came to help us out on any place where we got bogged down, and we used sit panels here to insulate the north walls and the west wall. And I don't know, what else would you do on the north side of a greenhouse, and how busy can you get there? Just using space up that is probably not very useful. There's a woodworking workshop there attached to the north side of the greenhouse, and on top of that there's a dining area, a yoga studio, and a teaching room. And then after that is a wood-burning, to the right is a wood-burning snorkel stove. And then there's a wood-burning sauna that's attached to the north, just on the other side of the stairs. So again, taking the whole concept of permaculture and multiple functions for a single use, we can pack in a lot of. I have 1 acre that I intensively manage, and there's all kinds of examples of that right there, like our little Shree greenhouse. And there's the wood-burning sauna. I didn't plant those sunflowers. I have a vineyard planted in there. I have about 70 grapevines that fruit, and I have a new area that I just planted grapes around there and down the terraces, and then we planted garlic in it as a catch crop, and then the volunteer sunflowers came in. And so it's like, a process that just goes on without you really having to do too much. And in a couple of years we'll have grapes while we're soaking in the hot tub. And so this is what it looks like in the wintertime. Right now the ducks are out there in the mulch eating. I have a few rabbits that's escaped. I'll go back and harvest those. And so they're free-ranging right now. Again, integrating the animals, we do them in somewhat confinement, but they're actually, we have a lot of, we free range our rabbits in pens on the ground so they actually can dig holes and have a better life. We use the mind map to organize some of our functions for the greenhouse. I don't think you can see any of this stuff here, but we'll be talking about it as I move along. So multiple functions for the greenhouse. Temperature regulators. So it's not just a place to grow money. It's a place to enjoy. It's a place to stay healthy. I have an archery range in there. I have a yoga studio. I have my sauna. So I basically just live in there. So it's not about growing money. And when we build greenhouses for people, right away they want to grow spinach and sell it and pay for the cost of the greenhouse. Well, the numbers don't work. You know, you build $1 million greenhouse and you're trying to grow spinach to pay off the mortgage on that. So, you know, it's, again, small scale solutions that work. And I think it says in the Bible, it said, in the beginning was the rock, or was it in the beginning was the word? But everything really goes back to the rock. And, you know, whether it's rock dust or whether it's, you know, rock for retaining, when you're working in sloped areas, you have to retain all of your garden beds. And so that rock is not only retaining the garden bed, but it's also thermal mass. And this is the climate battery that I helped develop over the last 25 years. This is a small version of it in my new greenhouse. And so in the back, you see the blue tank. There'll be a pipe on that and a fan that pulls the hot air into the soil profile, the hot, warm air. And then it goes through those pipes, and then it comes out the long pipe there as an exhaust, and it goes in hot and warm, moist, and it comes out cool and dry. And so that energy is stored in the soil. It's Polish geothermal, without, you know, the $5,000 well and all the plumbing, and so it's just really simple technology, and it's surprising no one really caught on to this for a while. And this is the central intake, and it's built on top of the original one I did, which was a wooden box and a swamp cooler with a squirrel cage fan in it. And every time we build a new greenhouse, we upgrade the systems. And now we do some very, very high-tech stuff. But none of it works better than the one I have built from nothing. None of them work any better. Even though you actually spend $1 million on a greenhouse, it really doesn't work any better. It's amazing. The plants in the background, so we're stacking time. So we were building the greenhouse, sheet mulching for the new soil that we were building on top of the old soil. But we were growing our plants to put in there, and for another greenhouse that we're building at the same time, so we could pop them right into the sheet mulch, and we're off and running. And 2 months later, we're already eating from the garden. This is I took the old pipes from the old system, integrated them into the new system, so I go down to 5 feet heating the soil with simple fans that run off PV. Now we're using some high-tech controllers so that all this stuff gets done on a computer. I don't have one of these yet, but all our commercial greenhouses have been moved into this system here. I'm still doing low-tech stuff. This on the left, maybe it's on the right. On the left is the old distribution box, which we call a plenum, and we were just building them out of wood, and the top part had all rotted out, so I just replaced it with some salvage wood and put a new course on top of it, and just like an old wooden boat. If some planks are rotten, you could just pull them out, put some new planks in there, and you sail off into the sunset. On the right is the wood-burning sauna, and we have a small little climate battery that just heats the floor of the sauna. And there's a high-tech fan that pulls the hot air from the sauna, from that tube there in the corner, down into that coil. So when you're sitting in the sauna, the gravel and the flagstones are very warm, and so that's additional storage there. And on the other side of that plywood is 1 inch of marble and 5 inches of concrete, and on the other side of that is 10 inches of foam. That's kind of intensive, but then that heats up to 120 degrees, and then heats the greenhouse for 24 hours. So when it gets down to 10 degrees outside, Fahrenheit, it's time to take a sauna. It's time to do your yoga. It's time to do your stretching. And it's time to heat the greenhouse. So that's what it looks like inside. I can put herbs in the pot there on the stove. And I found that stove at the dump. I get most of my wood from the dump or from on the roadside. So I'm not buying cords of wood, I'm just using recycled cottonwood and whatever. And this year we have a bunch of wood from our own. So that's a really great space. I've done some workshops over in Finland where they basically work and live out of the sauna. That's the first thing they build. So, we do natural venting. So I have pretty much no energy cost during the summer. I can just vent my greenhouse and cool it with natural venting, and then with canopy. If it isn't bananas or figs, it's passion fruit or beans that I put up to intercept the warm air. So I'm actually getting a yield out of that warm air instead of having to mitigate it. Again, simple solutions. Most commercial greenhouses spend a lot of energy cooling. There's the passion fruit that's over my hammock and gabion wall. This year we took the passion fruit died, so we put in scarlet runner beans and lab and velvet bean and lima beans. So those are the thermal mass is another key ingredient in keeping the greenhouse above 50 degrees. And it's a very simple way. The gabion wall, the patio, the water tanks, all of those take on and store the energy for the night, and the climate battery charges the soil, and all of those together with some recycling of air and the sauna keep it above 50 degrees, and with very, very, very low energy costs. Now we're going to go outside. So I'm writing a book called Bringing the Garden Indoors. It's going to be published by Chelsea Green. Hopefully it'll be out in a year. But all we did is take the forest garden that's outside and bring it inside. We do perennial polycultures outside. We have 150 varieties of stone fruits and hardy apples. We have Asian pears, like I said, 20 varieties of grapes and 20 varieties of apples and pears and cherries and all kinds of other exotics and it all goes to sleep in the wintertime. It all goes dormant, and it can get to 20 below, and the mulches are still active. The worms are still working in the soils, breaking up all of the wood chips and sawdust and stable cleanings and leaves. So nothing goes to sleep. And in the spring, on the right, everything wakes up. The wild bees come in and pollinate all of our fruit. We had a bumper crop this year. And so it's a self-maintaining, low energy. The pond is also I live at the base of a volcanic mountain which faces south, and there's a huge boulder fields up there, and the sun strikes those all day long. And then so the warm air, the air coming down from the mountain is warmer than, say, if that mountain was facing north and it was all snow. So that's, when the Anasazis stumbled onto the caves in Mesa Verde, they poked underneath there and they felt the rock, and they said, well, maybe this is a good place to hang out, So, making some observations about, those bigger microclimates, and then we have opportunities to create new and more intensive microclimates right on our own site. Now this pond takes the morning and afternoon sun and heats up and reflects onto the stone walls back in the spring. So that's like a zone 7, which we're out of zone 5, 5.5, and to actually increase the microclimate. And so we have ducks and fish in there, and lilies, and it's a nutrient-rich water source for foliar feeding and irrigating. So we amp up, take advantage of all those nutrient-rich manures that are in there. So when you have lots of diversity, if 1 or 2 crops fail, you don't care because you're always going to have something in the system. This last spring in western Colorado, there's a huge peach and grape area in Palisades. They lost 50% of their crop because of late frosts. And so Gary Nahum has written a book called Growing in Hotter, Drier Climates. And he's talking about the fact that these places around the world don't get their chilling factors anymore. So they're having to move higher. And I think the mantra is going to be move higher or go north. And so we at a higher elevation are still protected because our trees are still dormant. In Palisades, these trees have bloomed in February, okay? And the winter's not over in February in Colorado. So, a few months later when it get a polar shock, then everything wipes out, or half of it wipes out. And it only takes a couple of times when that happens and you're out of business. So by just being at a higher elevation, we put that off. And we can also increase microclimates that are cooler and put that off. But this is a typical yield. And I go around 5 to 6 months outside eating fruit every day. I don't cook a lot. I don't have to do anything. We have so many different cherries, and whatever we don't eat, we dry or freeze. Mulberries are my favorite fruit, and the old timers brought a lot of fruit into the valley where I live, the Italians, and we still have some of those really old heritage trees, but they haven't done much fruit production in our valley, and they've actually outlawed it. They've passed laws that you can't plant a new fruit tree in a new development because they're afraid of the bears and the alleys and stuff, so we have to fight that one. So this is besides just eating grapes off the vine, we picked several 5-gallon buckets and made some wine. I have grapes on every terrace. Some of them climb all the way to the top of pinyon trees. And there's 3 varieties of grapes growing on that one. These are all hardy table grapes, a few wine grapes, but mostly they did a lot of research in Minnesota and New York to develop hardy table grapes. And you can go in my valley, you can find a half a dozen grapevines. I have 25 that are fruiting. People just haven't planted them. They just don't get around to doing it. This is a black apricot, and it was a very productive. I have 2 of these trees. It's a cross between an apricot and a plum, natural. These are European pears. I have 7 or 8 varieties of these. And Asian pears and apricots. I have 20 varieties of apricots. Some seedlings, some grafted ones. So it's just a food jungle, and it's very low maintenance. And I even have garlic as a weed. So when you don't harvest a bulb of garlic, you get a huge clump of garlic. And if you have rich enough soils, I'll go into those areas with pond water, and I'll wind up getting some pretty big bulbs. not for commercial, but I have all the garlic I want. So again, weed is, as a garlic is a weed. This is a typical shot of one of our guilds, and there's grapes and all kinds of stuff in there. Just trying to see. That's my favorite plum, and there's 2 plums nestled around a Macintosh apple, and that thing has been fruiting for 15 years every year. Again, these things just keep coming back, and you don't have to do anything. We don't even prune a lot of stuff. I can't really see this stuff on here, but it's oh, okay, we're already up in, let's see, let me go back over here. Yeah. So I go on my walks every day, or not every day, a couple times a week, and go up in the forests and gather mushrooms and sit by the trees and spend a lot of time in the woods just kind of chilling out and getting ideas. I bring the mushrooms back, and on the left, we use a lot of cottonwood logs to build retaining walls, and we inoculate them with mushrooms, and so we have these, this mycelium going everywhere, not only for helping the plants, but some of it's edible, some of it's hallucinogenic, actually. That one actually was a hallucinogenic mushroom, and I didn't plant that intentionally, but. So we get the spent grain from the brewery, and then we feed it to all our animals, in addition to all the weeds and other things that we can coppice, and we have no food costs for our animals. So you can see the spent grain is going in one side, and the fertilizer is coming out the other side, and we pump that up onto our mulches and stuff. On the other side, we have rabbits that are eating the spent grain. And in the background is some wild turkeys that are coming, and I have some turkeys in that pen, and they were coming up to see what it was all about. I used to have turkeys come into my place and mentor some of my turkeys. That's always an interesting. So here, they're eating a brassica that we pulled up that maybe had some aphids on it. They also get a lot of lucena, banana leaves in the winter time. They eat Yukon leaves, and see, all that mulch around there gets cleaned out about every 10 days, and we use that as value-added mulch for making worms. And that's what we harvest. Lots of rabbits, and we can eat, 5 or 6 people can eat on off of the rabbits, and then we have a big pot of stew afterwards. Elderberries, that's the beans that we grow over our trellis to in the perennial polyculture. And the papayas, that's babaca. The bananas, we have about 5 varieties, and it's sort of like a banana circle, but we put in nitrogen-fixing trees in there. This is the place I hang out and dream. And we kind of gradually transformed this into perennial polyculture. We grew annuals in it for a while for our courses and stuff. And I have my archery range in there, and it's like a shoot my bow. And so this is a primitive skill that we can use not only for meditation, but sometimes it might become invaluable to harvest a deer or something like that. So, but I really like shooting my bow. And these are some of the racks of bananas that we've harvested out of there. And the babaca, that we use that in smoothies. That's a typical, that is grown in now. There's all kinds of papayas and cucumbers and peppers that become perennial. And on the right is the yacon. We pull that plant up, feeding the entire leaves and stalks to the animals, and there we go. We have a whole colander of nice tubers as an understory or root crop. Key limes have about 7 different kinds of citrus, and there's a passive solar home with the PV system. These are some of our harvests. And then we have a pantry. This is Independence Day, so we don't go to Whole Foods. We buy some produce and some of our staples from a big independent organic grower, and then we value add everything, dry our fruits and herbs, and make tinctures. One of the most important thing, one of the ways I was able to get up here in front of you is I took Brahmi, Gonacola, and what else is in here? Ginkgo. So that kind of clears out your mind and gives you it. We teach classes on that. This is a project that we just did this winter, this fall, where we limbed up a bunch of our forest to reduce the fire, and then we windrowed all the slash, and then we also got firewood. Then we put a trench, a swale above it, and I created about 200 feet of raised beds. We do this just with simple swales, but again, using Seth Holster's technique. I didn't swallow the biochar pill, but I took the placebo, and it worked just as good. And then, so creating soils, we just use whatever carbon we can find, and we don't value add it any other way, but just put it in our straw yard, let the animals eat what they will, and manure on it, and then we put that into the worms and add more mulch on it, and the natural myceliums and the microbes team, and they do all the work for us. So we're not trying to. We don't need any of those technologies. I think we have to use the precautionary principle a little bit. Things have been going on for centuries. These are some of the leaves we bring in, backhauling them all the time. Here's the sheet mulching of one of our greenhouses, just using whatever we could find there, building about 1.5 feet of sheet mulch soil. And we do use the compost tea machine, but we also make it in small batches. And we have water collection off of all our roofs, and a composting toilet, which is one of our first Sunny Johns that was actually. But I go out into the forest to get my relaxation and meditation, and all of this stuff is happening out in the forest on its own. Nobody's doing anything. They're not fertilizing. They're not doing anything. Everything. The tree falls down. The mycelium attack it. It turns into soil. This has been going on for centuries. This is my favorite tree. I snuggle up into there. It teaches me to relax a little bit. And, this is what the wild is like. It's a living example of what we should be doing. This is a stream that's coming down the mountain. This is like the vagina of the mountain. It's so lush, and it comes back every day, every year, and so we just have to, and then these are some of the touchy-feely things we do, like everybody else. We have classes, and we do workshops, and bring in schools, and do all that. And I'm going to try to get through some of our high-end greenhouses. Now, thank God there are a few 1% people that have invested in what we do, and it's taken the technology. This is like a $600,000 greenhouse that we built in Steamboat, and we were able to take my technology and take it to a much higher level. And these are the fish tanks in the back, and this is all done on SketchUp, and this is what it looked like after It got planted a few months. Again, another greenhouse that's a CSA greenhouse. They grow annuals. This is the climate battery, high tech with all the culverts, and this is what it looks like when it goes in commercially. Again, just using off-the-shelf ADS pipe. These are this is what that commercial greenhouse looks like. I personally don't want to do annuals anymore, especially in the wintertime. We also do forest gardening installations. This is a high-end where we took our class down and designed the forest garden at a high-end development, and we did a sandbox design and did the finished design, and then I went out and planted it, and that's what it looked like, and it's still ongoing, quite a beautiful place. We do school garden projects, building using domes mostly for growing food in cafeterias, and there's an acre of forest garden around that. This is another commercial installation of our climate battery where we put it into a commercial nursery greenhouse, and they had to own up for the energy thing. They weren't allowed to build a gluttonous greenhouse, so they had to put the climate battery in. And we actually take the nighttime cold air in the summertime and turn it into a cooling system. And then we reverse that, and it turns into a heating system in the wintertime. So this is just two people taking this technology all the way up to, in 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years, we've taken this. These are the intakes or the exits, and this nursery is very energy efficient. And we actually also have put this climate battery into the grow house in Denver, which is run by Adam Brock, who's here, and we took the slab out of this thing, put the climate battery in, and put the slab back on, and they're growing hydroponics in here. So again, these are some of the systems that we built, and then we have lots of tours, and then this is my way of relaxing. Besides going up into the woods, I go up on the reservoir with my whole cooler of fruit, and I'm sailing across the reservoir, just eating and throwing pits into the water. So I think I ended on time, right?
I work a lot with passive solar design in arid areas in very hot environments, and I'm wondering, with all of this incredible technology, if you've looked into any greenhouses that have been in ground. You can't hear me?
I can't hear you because I have hearing aids and there's a lot of blowback here. So
okay. Have you looked into or done research or done projects in sinking greenhouses underground partially to passively cool them in arid environments?
That's a technology that has worked, and again, we don't use that technology because we heat the solar, we heat the soil, and we don't need that technology.
Yeah,
so
I understand.
Yeah, but the key of our thing is the bananas are sitting in warm soils, so it can be very cold outside. If you're freezing and and you're naked, and you're sitting with your feet in some warm water, you're going to be happier. So the idea is, that all these plants are sitting in these very warm soils. They're getting charged every day. So that's just another little perk that the climate battery does. So we can, that's a reusable technology, and and we use passive and this active system together.
Gonna take our time, slow down and design.